I titled today's mind map for our Neville Goddard conversation, Allow It to Be. I want to relate this over to Thursday's video, in which we shared the insight that we learned from Nikola Tesla, actually going into his imagination and constructing his innovation with vivid detail. And from that vivid detail, being able to express it here in all its accuracy, down to the last detail. This is the power of working with imagination. And two things we want to relate to this is, number one, the quote from last Sunday's video, in which Neville stated, "Least action is the minimum of energy multiplied by the minimum of time. Therefore, in moving from your present state to the desired state, you must use the minimum of energy to take the shortest possible time." So we're speaking of mind, state of consciousness. And he also says the journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. To make the journey, you must employ the psychological equivalent of least action. And the psychological equivalent is mere assumption. Now, we brought up in Thursday's video some suggestions, in which we included in the end of the video the auto-suggestion. This brings us an enormous amount of internal peace in our mind. As stated in the Hermetica, we were given the two gifts of speech and mind. Speech can be looked at as image of mind. And so we want to have a high level of internal peace in our mind when we are imagining our ideal, our vision, our day-to-day journey. One of my favorite things to do is to connect with people, building relationships, connecting with people, and understanding and learning about others. Usually, when I'm out and about, I'm in conversation. I love to meet people. And one of the greatest benefits from working with this information, or actually three of them I have them written down here that I'd like to share with you, is as follows, and we're going to dive into it as we progress into this conversation. Number one, a deeper degree of understanding with those that I communicate with, understanding them better. And I mean really at a feeling level. Now, this translates into how I relate to others and how others relate to me. Because the state of mind is all is in harmony and in contribution to my vision, as discussed in last Sunday's video. And that being said, I, being representative of the all, the infinite mind of all, happens to also be in contribution to the vision of others. That's how I think. In the earlier stages, this was an assumption. And then now I see it more so in the experience. That's the power of working with assumption. Number two, flow-based, lighthearted conversations that seem to encourage that ecstatic feeling. We discussed this in one of our previous Neville discussions. I'll put a link in the description to that video, where he spoke about imagining what would imply the feeling of ecstatic, and allowing that to be a representative of all different aspects of your life, a consolidated feeling of ecstatic. Number three, one of my favorite things to do as well is to reflect upon the conversations that I have with others, which, as a result of working with this information and realizing that the cause is within what I identify with, what I associate with, the state of mind that I'm in, what we say I am too, I'm able to reflect upon what I am consciously and unconsciously identifying with, and thus I get inspiration from each conversation and revelation. Inspiration as to what to share with others, what to discuss in these videos, and other applications for inspiration. And revelation I look at it as, what did I unconsciously say I am to? In my behaviors, in what I said, in how the other person responded. I know that the cause is within. So I look forward to, actually also brings me the feeling of ecstatic, and I would suggest also having that assumption. That way you feel more at peace and integrated with the five sensory experience. And from there, I'll be able to understand myself further. And one of the reasons why I continue to encourage this is actually what I learned from the book, The Kabbalion. So I've got some notes here that I want to tie into Thursday's video, because we spoke of essentially going into mind and actually feeling the security that you are safe in mind, and that in your mind you have the power to think, imagine, and visualize, and really allow yourself to step into how you really want to be, beyond ideas of limitations of what a person might experience in the five sensory world. Now, this is very powerful for entrepreneurs, because when a person conjures up in their mind's eye an innovative idea, we want to go about it like Tesla did. Again, watch that video, Thursday's video. I'll put a link in the description to it. With no limitation, and seeing it as a workshop in which one can dwell in there. And as a result of dwelling in there, they'll be able to pull with vivid accuracy the details. Now, with everything, I always say this, we get better at it with practice, so I want to encourage it more so. But here are some perspectives that will allow us to think like this more so. And as we allow ourselves to think like this more so, we feel more at peace and ease in the world we live in, the day-to-day journey, on the way to realizing the vision. They said, you are dwelling in the infinite mind of the all, and your possibilities and opportunities are infinite, both in time and space. Now that's the kind of thinking we want to identify with. If we're dwelling in the mind of all, and we can access the mind of all in our imagination, then we have access to the possibilities and opportunities which are infinite, which has expressed itself through us and others as this world, what we see here, the innovation, the artistic expressions. They also said, rest calm and serene. You are safe and protected by the infinite power of the father-mother mind. Within the father-mother mind, mortal children are at home. Now we want to read that over and over again until we really realize that we can internally dialogue or imagine or think or adopt certain states of mind and perspectives easily because we are safe in the father-mother mind. We are at home in the father-mother mind. We dwell in the father-mother mind. We are safe in it. And the states of mind express itself, the artistic expression or the innovation. And so we find the automatic expression, such as what we also talked about in Tuesday's video. Automatic expression. As mentioned, this has been my experience. I related it over to relationships and conversations with others. And I also find that through thousands of conversations with other artists and entrepreneurs, those that were able to, even for periods of time on their journey, actually embody what is being discussed here, were actually finding that they were getting higher degrees of revelation, of vivid accuracy, of details, of imaginal art or innovation, and they were allowing themselves to express it. They were finding it easy to express it. I want to relate this over to one of his lectures called Mental Diets, in which he states, talking to oneself is a habit everyone indulges in. We could no more stop talking to ourselves than we could stop eating and drinking. All that we can do is to control the nature and direction of our inner conversations. Most of us are totally unaware of the fact that our inner conversations are the causes of the circumstances of our life. We are told, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But do we know that man's thinking follows the tracks laid down in his own inner conversations? To turn the tracks to which he is tied to in the direction in which he wants to go, he must first put off his former conversation, which is called in the Bible the old man, and be renewed in the spirit of his mind. Speech is the image of mind. Therefore, to change his mind, he must first change his speech. By speech is meant those mental conversations we carry on with ourselves. The world is a magical circle of infinite possible mental transformations, for there are infinite number of possible mental conversations. When man discovers the creative power of inner talking, he will realize his function and his mission in life. Then he can act to a purpose. Without such knowledge, he acts unconsciously. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. But as civilized beings, we must become aware of them and act with a purpose. So let's really zoom into this part here. He says everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. Now, this holds a lot of insight. If a person has certain mental conversations that they're not aware of, they can perhaps look at how they relate with others, observe their experiences with others during interactions, after interaction, and really ask the question within, based on how I felt, let's say a person felt limited or disempowered after the conversation, or we'll look at these three perspectives here. I can't have what I want. Once I have it, I'll end up losing it. Others have it because they have X and I don't have X. We'll look at those and we'll relate it over. If a person perhaps finds that certain experiences upon feeling afterwards brings them into a certain state of mind or a way of being in which they don't really feel like themselves, who they really are, this provides an opportunity to ask the question within. What am I associating within? What's the inner conversation? And although right now I might not be consciously aware of this inner conversation, I do have the ability to make the unknown known. It's within me. Now, what we want to do is allow ourselves to be free and joyous and peaceful in discovering the unknown. Some might be afraid to go into their mind and discover this kind of talking. So thus they may end up actually restricting themselves from finding that creative inspiration, innovation, or what already exists in the world within. Again, we're paralleling this here to innovation in regards to what Tesla did. And connecting it over to Thursday's video, this applies for other areas as well. Perhaps they don't really feel safe within themselves, in their mind. They don't feel safe. Again, we want to remind ourselves what we learned from the Kabbalion. You are dwelling in the infinite mind of the All, and your possibilities and opportunities are infinite, both in time and space. Rest calm and serene. You are safe and protected by the infinite power of the Father-Mother mind. Within the Father-Mother mind, mortal children are at home. Now we want to think about that. We want to start identifying with that kind of way of thinking if we want to have more internal peace, so we can actually find our ways of thinking within ourselves, that what he was referring to. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. Now, Neville was highly realized. He was able to observe things and communicate things in ways that really, if you study his information, you can keep studying it, and more so upon integration of the information, applying the information, you will understand it deeper, to deeper degrees. Things that were always there might tend to stand out even more. This is the result of making the unconscious conscious, bringing awareness on what we once assumed ourselves to be automatic on. Now we become more aware and conscious of it. And this is a journey. And I encourage it to find peace within yourself. It's okay. It's okay if you have shamed yourself in the past or any kinds of interpretations that seem to create unnecessary complexity in thinking. Perhaps we're afraid to look at it. We're looking at this from the perspective of we're safe in mind. There's nothing to fear in mind. And to emphasize his level of understanding, let's really reflect upon this quote here before we look at those perspectives that I shared that we would want to evaluate to see if that's really accurate thinking. It says, "If we do not like what is happening to us, it is a sure sign that we are in need of a change of mental diet. For man, we are told, lives not by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And having discovered the mouth of God to be the mind of man," remember what we say I am too, we call upon the power by consciously or unconsciously, whether we actually say I am or something that implies, would also be a representation of calling forth I am. And so thus he says, a mind which lives on words or inner talking. We should feed into our minds only loving, noble thoughts. For with words or inner talking, we build our world. So we look around, we look at this world, and we say, okay, how much unnecessary complexity and frustration and anger has been expressed as a result of certain unconscious inner conversations? Again, no need to shame ourselves. We take the responsibility. We go in within ourselves and say, a little bit more so today, I'm going to adjust my inner conversations. It's amazing. It starts to play out in how we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to environments, how we relate to anything. And on the entrepreneurial journey and the artistic path of expression, whatever your art may be, you'll start to see, you allow yourself to express. You feel more at peace, at ease. You allow the hunches and inspirations to flow through you automatically. Now, all of that is a change of consciousness, change of state of mind. And what I have found to facilitate what he's referring to here, the psychological equivalent of least action and the psychological equivalent being mere assumption, to facilitate that is to say, you know what, we could assume it to be that way. I could assume myself to be the kind of person that really gets what I want. I can have what I want. And I assume myself to be the person that when I do have what I want, there's no need to fear of losing it. I'll keep it. And so then a person will say, once I have it, I'll keep it. I'm not afraid to lose it. There's nothing to be lost. Everything is found within, and I'm complete within. There isn't really anything to be lost. Everything is within, and I'm complete within, and thus the expression of it is my life. And so then number 3 even becomes irrelevant. Others have what I desire because they have this and I don't have that, or whatever it is no longer kept into consideration because we keep it clean. I am. I have it. It is within me, and thus expresses itself in this expression, whatever it may be, the innovation, the creative expression, and so forth, the behavioral change, the transformational change. So when a person has those supporting beliefs, it's easier for them to get into the state of mind that's one with the vision and dwell in it. And if they fall out of it, they're okay, because if it's persistent falling out of it, they recognize that it's perhaps certain thinking patterns that, as he says here, everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. So they'll discover it. They will discover it. This has been the case with me. I have seen recurring patterns of whatever it is in my life that I didn't like to see. And I said, what if Neville is really true to such a degree that this, what I assume right now as, it's not within me, could it be true for this as well? What if I just assume that I'll find it within myself? And then upon reflection of some interactions, I love to work with this when it comes to sales, consulting, and leadership. Great opportunities to reveal what's within and be inspired. As I look at it, I'm like, wait a second. They're playing out a certain kind of theatrical performance. I'm playing out that theater here in regards to a certain thinking pattern. And a thinking pattern that I once had was they have a sustainable business because it is in a certain industry. So that's my thinking pattern. I discovered that essentially what I was unconsciously saying I am too was that because I am not in that industry, I won't be able to have that same level of success because that particular industry has more of that kind of success. And I start to change that. I say, well, what if I start to find more success in my industry? Then all of a sudden, certain ideas, hunches, inspiration, people show up, information shows up, or certain ideas pop up in my mind. I take that information, I apply it, and revenue starts going up. So I believe we can all benefit from finding that peace within ourselves, resting calm and serene, as stated in the Kabbalion, that you are safe and protected by the infinite power of the Father-Mother mind. Within the Father-Mother mind, mortal children are at home. This allows us to see more potentiality, more opportunity, different perspectives, reveal the infinite potentialities that we can enter to, states of mind within ourselves, and dwell in, identify with it, and experience it, which also relates to what he says here. The world is a magical circle of infinite possible mental transformation, for there are infinite number of possible mental conversations. So what are we dialoguing about? What are we saying I am to? For the stuff that is obvious, that is within our awareness, we can change those conversations around. We can start communicating differently to ourselves. And for the things that we're not consciously aware of, we can be open to the idea that we can reveal what we are not consciously aware of, by first realizing the truth that we are safe in mind. And we can find these inner conversations that seem to be suppressed or repressed. They can be brought to the surface. I found many of them brought to the surface. And when it's brought to the surface, we can change that internal conversation and thus experience reality from those ideal perspectives, transcending past, I can't have what I want, because maybe the internal conversation that is not in conscious awareness, deep down, what we're unconsciously saying I am to is you can't have what you want. Transcending past, I'll have it, but I'll end up losing it if this criteria, that criteria, realizing again that perhaps we're having that conversation without conscious awareness, and we can bring that conversation to the surface, make peace with it, and have the accurate inner conversation. So I trust you found this video to be helpful and beneficial for your goals, your visions, your dreams that you would like to see realized. And we will be discussing this in the upcoming conversations further. And so to encourage this, let's conclude today's conversation with an auto-suggestion. We can say, I recognize that the least action in mind is mere assumption. I have a greater ability to assume what is ideal and thus identify with a state of mind that's reflective of the life, the innovation, the creativity that I express. I realize I'm safe in the infinite mind of the all, where all possibilities and opportunities exist, ready to be brought forth through me as innovation and creative expression. I rest calm and serene, knowing I am safe and protected by the infinite power in the infinite Father-Mother mind. I realize that this is my home, my mind, and I'm able to go in and understand my home and reveal it as the great work of creative expression in my innovation, in my artistic expressions, in my day-to-day life. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.